The Raila swearing will go on after all. It appears Raila Odinga has chosen to ignore advice. Last week, I shot a video in which I advised him to shelve this idea. Since then, other players, notably the United States of America and other foreign countries, have urged him, but he has said no. The most recent voice is from Francis Atwoli, the Court Secretary General, who has urged Raila Odinga to reconsider this swearing in. But it will appear Raila has chosen to ignore. He has good reasons. For example, he's arguing why would foreign countries, notably America, ask him today to consider the Constitution and reconsider this swearing in when they have never said anything when Kenyans have been killed by the state. The church has similarly been dismissed by Raila, I think because the church has been silent when all these atrocities have been committed. They have never condoled those who have lost loved ones to police bullets, and so on and so forth. So it would appear, as the adage goes, this is water under the bridge, and that come Tuesday, there will be this swearing on, and therefore we have to deal with this. First, I believe this is not actually swearing in. The details we now have, which have emerged after the committees charged with this business of the People's Assembly and the Tuesday event, the details seem to suggest that there will be no swearing in as envisaged by the Constitution of Kenya. And that brings me now to the government. I want to appeal to the government to allow NASA to have their event uninterrupted. Because in the past we have seen, anytime you have intervened, we have lost property and we have lost life. People have been injured. The nation's reputation has been injured because of the way the police have handled the riots. I'm appealing to the government because now we know almost for a fact that this is not the swearing in that Gideon Muigai talked about. I'm asking the government to let NASA have their swearing in, whatever they call it, uninterrupted. Because the only reason the government may want to disrupt this function is if there are things they fear could happen which they don't know. My argument is this: if there's something the government doesn't know that Raila plans to do, then it is time to fire the man in charge of intelligence. If there are quarters in this country, within government and elsewhere, that plans to do things that the government doesn't know, then the people in charge of those sections ought to be fired and shown the door. Because as far as we know, I don't think there's anything bad. To the Attorney General, I also advise him that you must know the Kenyan problem today is not legal. Don't make things worse. Don't incite NASA followers by threatening Raila with high treason. Because you do know, as well as I know, Bana AG, you cannot arrest Raila. I think there are people who think they can. But what is to be gained from arresting and charging Raila may not be what you would expect. Because what you will get will be worse than what you expected. So let's shelve that idea. Let's stop inciting NASA followers. Let's allow them to have their meeting, because I suggest and I suspect there will be nothing much from this swearing in. To Raila Odinga, I want to advise you, like I did before, in whatever you do, remember you have people who follow you and love you, and they may be willing to do anything in your name. Do your things in such a manner that you limit harm to your followers. This I'm repeating. Now to both Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta. This country is in a state where we could burn. And the reason is this: increasingly, the two of you could be getting to a position or to a point where the decisions you make are not entirely yours, that there are hardliners around you who may push you to do things that may then harm this country. Raila Odinga will recall, and you have read your history, that sometimes leaders didn't want to do things, but they were pushed by those around them. Remember 1870, the Ems Telegraph. that Bismarck doctored, sending Prussia and France to war, in which hundreds of thousands of lives were lost, so that the people around you may have an agenda, and seeing that you are a little cautious, they may want to push you into realizing that agenda, sometimes without you knowing. So going forward, I appeal to both leaders to try and be their own men, because the country needs them now, and then the country needs them to sit down and discuss and talk. It's time for Uhuru Kenyatta to pay less attention to those people around him, and it's time for Raila to listen to people around him with a lot more caution, because this country needs them. This country needs them more than it needs perhaps anybody else for its own survival. Finally, I must say this, that as a country, we must not allow ourselves to be in a state where a simple spike can set the country on fire. We must avoid situations such as the ones we shall find ourselves in on the 12th of December on Tuesday. These are not good situations to be in. Anything could happen. So going forward, we must avoid this. And how do we avoid this? And this is where I must say I understand Raila's predicament. Because he's been pushed to a wall. This country must work towards electoral justice. Because if there's anything that will destroy this country, it is electoral fraud. We must endeavor to ensure that we have an electoral system that is acceptable to all, where the winner is congratulated, where the loser feels the pain of losing but accepts. That's the only way we can guarantee ourselves peace in future, that we must have justice during elections, so that we do not have this kind of situations, because these are dangerous situations to be in, where a simple thing can happen and the entire country is on fire. So going forward, I appeal to those in authority to do whatever it takes, whether it be national dialogue, whether it be constitutional changes, whatever form it will take. But I appeal to those who lead this country to ensure that in the future, any other future election we have is conducted in a manner that is in accordance with the Constitution, that leaves minimal doubt in the minds of those who have participated and all Kenyans in general, that this indeed was a free and fair election, so that this country that we call Kenya is ours and not for a few people. Let everybody feel he's part of Kenya, and through the electoral processes, Kenyans will feel they are Kenyans if the election is free, if elections are free and fair, and if these elections are inclusive. Let's avoid situations such as the ones we are in. Because to allow this, and I remind Kenyans, sadly, that it took a young man in Tunisia setting himself on fire for the country to almost get destroyed. So let's avoid situations such as the ones of Tuesday. Although we have said it's water under the bridge, let Raila conduct his business on Tuesday, but going forward, let us do everything possible to avoid getting ourselves in this kind of situation.